thousands lost before you list, hidden pricing mistakes. Most St. Louis homeowners are unknowingly sabotaging their home sale before they ever list because they're missing these hidden psychology pricing mistakes. Want the secret to max profit when you're ready to sell your home? My goal is to make you the most savvy home seller here in St. Louis to maximize your profit so you can sell on your timeline. So stick around because we're gonna dive into the psychology of pricing, what it actually looks like when it's happening in the market in real time. Here's what no one is talking about. Buyers are psychologically manipulating themselves, and believe it or not, I did it when I bought my house, and you probably did it when you bought your house. Because price, it isn't just a number, it's a psychological cue to the buyer. But more importantly, price is a negotiation with the buyer's time. They're going to give up their time to come and see your listing. If that property doesn't meet their expectations in terms of price and condition, they're not going to be willing to give up their time. This is part 2 of our mini-series, breaking everything down that we learned from last year. That way your pricing strategy works for you and not against you. My name is George, and over the last 10 years, I've been helping people buy and sell here in St. Louis. So whether we work together or not, I'm gonna give away all the insights that I've gained over the last 10 years. In part 1, we established that St. Louis is seasonal and that timing is everything. But even if you list your home at the perfect time, buyers are making decisions before you've ever decided to list your property. These patterns decide whether or not they click on your home and schedule a showing, or if they scroll right past it, all based on what they've seen online. In fact, behavioral economist Daniel Kahneman, author of Thinking Fast and Slow, have studied how mental shortcuts, cognitive biases, impact decision making. And when it comes to buying a home, there's 3 specific principles that come into play. Anchoring bias. Buyers compare your home's price to the first few listings they've seen using that initial information as their benchmark. I'll go a step further and say that the pre-approval is a solid anchor. Scarcity effect. When a home is perceived as a good deal or in high demand, buyers feel a heightened urgency to act quickly. Price perception. Charm pricing and psychological price thresholds affect how buyers emotionally respond to a home's value. The last one, decoy pricing. When buyers see a slightly less attractive or overpriced home next to yours, your property can appear to be the better deal by comparison, making it more desirable. These 4 psychological triggers are at play every time someone is scrolling through Zillow. So if you're not taking advantage of it, you're definitely leaving money on the table. So let's talk about the power of price anchoring and what that looks like for you. The first few homes set that mental benchmark. If a buyer has been looking in your area for $400,000 and all of a sudden they see your listing at $430,000 with no obvious added value, you've triggered what we call price resistance. Their brain immediately signals this doesn't match the pattern, and they just keep scrolling. On the flip side, if you're priced strategically, positioned as a slight value compared to the other homes, it activates that scarcity effect. Buyers suddenly think, oh wait, this one might actually be a deal. And that's the small shift that doesn't get you clicks, it gets you real competition. Now let's talk about something that's even more interesting, which is decoy pricing. Some sellers intentionally use decoy pricing to create the illusion of a better deal. Have you seen this happen in your neighborhood where people will list their homes and it seems like they have a normal amount of traffic and then a new listing comes on market and there's just a ton of people at the open house and it's like a revolving door for showings? That seller effectively used decoy pricing with scarcity and completely absorbed all the buyers that were looking for that weekend. Imagine there's a home listed for $450,000 and it really has minimal updates. Then right next to it, a new listing pops up for $430,000 that's fresh and has modern updates with it. Suddenly, that $430,000 home looks like a killer steal. That higher priced home, it's gonna take longer to sell, but it made your house look like a steal. It's classic decoy effect, and that's really the power behind the decoy effect on buyers' psychology. Many sellers tell me that they want to list higher and that they're willing to negotiate down. In 2022, the National Association of Realtors completed their annual survey. Do you know what they found? They found that 88% of buyers are willing to pay the list price or above, and that only 12% of buyers are making lower offers than the list price. So if you list with the strategy of going high and then going down, you're only working with 12% of the entire market. That's because all of these elements of psychology have been working on the buyers. And in fact, the buyers have been working on themselves so that when a property comes up that is a truly killer deal, they're going to go after it and they're going to throw everything they can at it. Remember, in my first video, I talked about St. Louis being seasonal and that it does have a peak month. If you're interested in watching that and learning when St. Louis peaks, you can go check out that video in this playlist. I said that timing was everything, but ultimately it's not the end of the world if you list in January or if you list in September or December. There's always buyers in the market. And that brings me to my next point, and really where sellers go wrong. They price based on past sales, thinking this home sold for $400,000 earlier this year. My home is worth at least that. But past sales are trailing indicators, and buyers are using leading indicators, which is current listings, to set their expectations. That's why pricing at the peak of summer sales doesn't always hold, especially if you list in September or the later months. By August, St. Louis demand has completely shifted. Instead of pricing only on the past, we have to price based on the past comparable sales and the current market conditions. That requires you or your agent to look at homes that are active on the market and they've been on the market for more than one weekend. Here's how this plays out in real time. A home listed for $250,000 that sells for $275,000. It triggered scarcity and urgency, creating competition. Buyers felt they had to act fast or this deal was going to go away. A home listed for $250,000 that sells for $250,000. It met expectations. It was solid. It just didn't create that type of urgency and that feeling of scarcity that buyers are going through when they make multiple offers. A home that's listed for $250,000 that eventually sells for $230,000, it sat too long and completely lost its perceived value. And it didn't meet the market's expectations. Once buyers sense that a home is lingering, it activates a different psychological trigger, social proof. If no one else is making an offer, they just assume something's wrong with it. Let me ask you a question. If you've looked for a home, didn't you go through that same scenario? Now, instead of competing for your home, they're pouring into the new listings that meet their expectations based on their price anchoring, that scarcity effect, and the sense of urgency that they've created in themselves because they're still looking for a home. Ultimately, your pricing strategy controls the entire outcome. Pricing is the one thing that as a buyer walks through a house or they click on it online, they're constantly comparing the price. They're asking, does this property compare with my anchor property that was my dream home for my budget? Because when you nail down a pricing strategy, buyers don't walk away from inspections. Really nothing scares them away because of that fear of missing out. When I have multiple offers on a listing and it goes above the list price, those buyers' chances of terminating the contract go down to near zero. One last critical moment. What happens when the buyer actually shows up and they open the door to your home? Because pricing gets them in, but the question is what keeps them hooked once they walk in the door and they start looking around? What small crucial details flip the mental switch of I'm just looking to now I need this house. This is where my family is going to live. This is where I'm going to spend the next 7, 10, 15 years. In the next video, I'm going to break down exactly what happens in the house. How to turn a showing into an offer and make buyers say that this house is my house. If you found this information useful or helpful, liking, subscribing, and sharing with a friend definitely goes a long way for me. And even if you don't share it or like it or subscribe, I'm going to keep going through the insights that I learned throughout 2024.